So there's no sitting in the back rows since this is such a big room. We can get everybody up as close as we can. I want to get the steps in on the Fitbit, but I'm not sure that I could. Yes, this is perfect. We have just a couple more minutes before we get started. So. Okay. Oh, excellent. We're talking to the masses, ladies.
All right. As long as I can.
All right, well, good afternoon and welcome to the employer panel discussion this afternoon. We're so glad that you are here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Beth Brinly and I'll be the facilitator for this panel, and I'm the Vice President of Workforce Innovation at Mayer & Mayer. Mayer & Mayer is a consulting firm that specializes in change management as well as talent development investment strategies. So been in business for about 29 years. I've been with the firm for about 6 since finishing a 7-year stint with the Education and Workforce Development Cabinet in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and it's a thrill to be here. Just want to talk briefly about the objectives for this particular session, and we're going to be setting the stage at the national level regarding this particular industry, IT industry, and its cross-cutting nature in regard to the different sectors. I'm going to also share, we're going to share the business perspective from our wonderful panelists who are here with us today regarding information technology needs in Iowa, as well as information technology needs in various sectors in Iowa, as well as just some general needs of their businesses. And then we're going to have some great interactive discussion about the challenges and opportunities that have been presented by the partners, and give an opportunity, if we have the time, for additional questions from you all specifically. So I wanted to provide some highlights from a national discussion that I participated in regard to the IT industry, and both what their needs are and the context of the industry today. So first of all, there are 3.5 million IT postings in 2015 nationwide, to give you a sense of the demand. It takes about 10% longer on average to fill IT positions than other positions within firms, and with cybersecurity, it takes even longer. What really is taking place in IT in particular is hybrid jobs combining different skill sets. We have a healthcare company here. Healthcare and healthcare informatics are a good example of the crossbreeding between healthcare information and understanding that particular industry and bringing IT skill sets to it, for example. And there is a need to identify transferable IT skills. There is such an evolution in the IT industry on a regular basis that it's really important that we help upskill our incumbent worker in this arena as well. So let's talk a little bit about the context that we're speaking about when we look at the IT industry. So the technology industry, it fills about 6.7 million positions directly. And then when we go cross-cutting in technology occupations and other sectors, we're talking another 7.1 million folks that are employed in that field. Some of the focuses in that particular industry these days are the cloud, data, mobile applications, cybersecurity, and privacy. It's really important to develop career pathways starting at the earliest levels of the education system all the way through the universities, as well as providing micro certifications to help the incumbent workers get upskilled as new technologies are being introduced. And this last one says employers with unrealistic skill expectations. And with that, this is interesting. Some of our HR folks that are working in the IT industry shared this story with me where there was a new certification that was out and they were recruiting folks for the position. They couldn't get it filled. Well, the reason they couldn't get it filled was the IT certificate had only been out for 2 years, and the HR posting said 2 years to have this certificate and 5 years of experience. Well, there's no one in the field who could have that experience. So I thought that was an interesting observation, and one where we can work together in partnership and what are the right types of skills job postings in the IT industry in those cross-cutting sectors that could be helpful. The other thing I wanted to just quickly touch on is the whole idea of shaping the future. As we're talking about the workforce, first of all, the IT workforce is, there are new behaviors because folks are working from home and in hubs and across continents even, and so how we deal with that is important. The second is that the technologies, folks can be working off their phone, their iPad, their laptop, their hardware, and so the technologies that are available are broad and wide. The millennial workforce will be over 50% of the workforce in this particular industry by 2020, and so there are some compelling issues and challenges around that. And then the whole issue of mobility. Folks can work for companies from anywhere, as we talked about just a moment ago. And then the whole globalization of the industry and the work that's around that. So it's my pleasure now to introduce the panelists with you who we're going to be having this robust conversation with. On my left, your right, is Natalie McNaught, who's with Unity Point Health. And then next to her is Kim Deskin with Wells Fargo. And we have a team from Wells Fargo here today. Andrea Bell is also here. And then finally, Lisa Hefner with the Principal Financial Group. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to our panelists and to express our appreciation. So we're going to dive right in at this particular point. And the first question that I want to throw out to this esteemed group, and then I'll be coming down and kind of working in the audience with you all as well, was we want to know about your business, both your opportunities and your challenges, and we want it to be deep enough that we know how to work with you as a partner, and to share with us specifically what is keeping you up at night in regard to your workforce and the cross-cutting IT workforce within your respective businesses. So, Natalie, I'll start with you, if you don't mind.
So, I work with Unity Point Health Des Moines, and a lot of the positions that I do recruiting for is our entry-level positions, clerical positions. And what was my main question? What keeps me up at night?
Yes.
Regard at work. I think it's always about finding the right candidates for our positions, making sure that I'm doing enough in my job to find the right candidates, whether it be in IT or nursing or any field that we work with. That, is our team doing enough? Are we reaching out? Do we have enough contacts? Are we doing everything that we can to find the right candidates for our positions? What's the next question? Is that it? Okay.
Yes. Kim, what would you like to share?
Hi, good afternoon. Kim Deskin with Wells Fargo. I specialize in high-volume entry-level positions, so a lot of your clients could and do many of my entry-level positions. The thing that keeps me up at night is that I'm afraid that I have jobs open that I'm not reaching for your candidates or your clients. I don't know that you have folks that are interested in coming to work for Wells Fargo. So a deeper and better relationship between each other is an absolute must.
Great, thank you.
I'm Adriana Bell. I'm an IT manager with Wells Fargo, and I would say one of our biggest challenges is my entire team is all over the world. So I have, within my organization, I have people in, I think, 10 different states within the U.S., and I have a team in Bangalore, India. So it's very challenging, very mobile, flexible environment. I have, of my entire organization, I only have one person that actually works in an office, with the exception of India. So myself included, I just got booted out of my cubicle last month because I work from home more than I'm in the office. So with having that kind of flexibility, it's a bit challenging around ensuring that team members are performing sufficiently, because there is a difference when you work from home. I tell my team very openly that I have a very, very strong work ethic, but when I work from home, I have the temptation to switch laundry around and to load the dishwasher and to try to balance that of, am I giving 100%? Now, on the flip side of that, sometimes it's hard to shut down, and I put in a lot more hours. So it gets to be challenging, and depending on the personalities, ensuring that we're hiring people, when we do hire in the U.S., that can actually accommodate that. We do have office space for people that don't want to work from home, but the majority of the technology organization under my chain of command does work from home. The other challenge that keeps me up at night, I guess this is probably the big one, is trying to find the balance between the resources that we need here in the United States versus what we have in India. The cost savings factor is pretty significant in hiring team members in India. So there's kind of a drive to do that, but because a large percentage of our organization is actually in the United States, we have to make sure we have a balance between the team members, because my organization actually provides technology services to the programmers of Wells Fargo. So our customers are internal team members. So we have to make sure that we are staffed sufficiently in the U.S. and internationally, so that around the clock, Wells Fargo programmers, whether they're here in the U.S. or in India, can provide that support. The biggest challenge is when we do have needs for IT folks. The majority of the time in Des Moines specifically, we hire contractors, because usually it's to fulfill project assignments and things like that. With base resources, we don't do a significant amount of hiring of FTEs. So a lot of times, and as she mentioned in the intro, we are looking for specific skill sets too. So when we go to the recruiting companies, we usually say we need a person with this specific skill set, which is kind of difficult for entry-level people. So it gets to be challenging when sometimes we could just bring someone in and hire, or and train them, versus bringing someone in that has that skill set. But I would say our biggest challenge is ensuring we have a sufficient balance between our U.S. and our international teams so that we're providing sufficient around-the-clock support.
Hello. When I ask myself what's keeping me up at night, some of the analytics that Beth shared kind of keeps me up at night, knowing, looking at that statistical information and learning about the workforce that as it exists today and what the future looks like. That keeps me up at night. Also, I would say just the rate of change. For those of you that aren't familiar with Principal, we are a global company. We're in 13 countries currently, so we have language differences. We have time differences. We use technology to try to collaborate with our partners globally, and the rate of change and the technology that's changing is pretty crazy. So I've been with the company a number of years, and everyone didn't have a computer at their desk when I started. And now, we do things on Skype, and we use apps on our phones for things. And so just the amount of change is crazy. It's exciting to be part of, but it's also sometimes tiring to keep up with.
Thank you so much, panelists. And I think one of the implications, too, about the globalization of the workforce, and Lisa, we'll keep that microphone with you because we'll ask the next question then to you, but is that the cultural differences that are associated and the importance of being good global citizens and work participants is really a challenge as well. And so thinking about that as we prepare our workforce to participate in that global economy that we're so dependent upon. So the next question I have for you ladies to think about is if we were able to craft solutions that combined all our public resources, and we do have quite a few federal and state resources and even some local resources to bring to bear, aligned around your needs, and we're able to produce consistent, quality, dependable talent pipeline to fuel your growth, can we count on you to contribute to the partnership as well? And if so, what are some of the things that you all are willing to partner around so that we can meet your talent pipeline needs?
Well, I would venture to say that we are interested in developing ongoing relationships and developing talent. What is being done at the earliest stages? Some of you work with young clients, some of you work with older clients. We really need to partner. That if you're training them and educating them to develop skills that aren't going to be needed in the workforce, we're going to have a kind of mismatch. And so we both are heavily vested in having a good partnership. And I see that being as critical going forward.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I would kind of like to piggyback off of that. I think one of the things that we would really like to benefit, or I guess how we could partner, is the diversity awareness and competency is really, really important. As you mentioned, with our global interaction, not only do we have customers who are international, but we have team members who are international. And I think one of the things that I experienced when we first put a team in India was my US-based team members, because of the cultural differences, struggled with having good communication, good relationships with those team members. And within Wells Fargo and within our organization, whether you live in India, Hong Kong, or the US, we are all the same team. One Wells Fargo is our mantra. And so to get our team members to have that perspective around how do I communicate with different cultures? how do I recognize and accept the differences? Because I think one of the challenges that we had initially, and I think it's really gotten, our company has done a fantastic job of trying to educate us and increase the awareness, increase the engagement with the teams. So we do a lot of Skyping, IMing, everything is virtual. And we do video conferences with those team members as well, because when you put a face, I think sometimes it's very easy to hide behind Skype and email, or IMs, I guess. And so we do a lot of face-to-face. So being able to communicate and be open to differences, whether it's an international difference, whether it's an ethnic difference, it's a religious difference, but just being open to the fact that we all bring something different to the table. And I think that's really a significant value to team members, because if you come into the organization with that mentality of, I can work with anyone and I'm open to other people's ideas, that makes you a very strong candidate, because that's something that will make you, you might be more likely to be assigned to projects and things that touch other parts of the organization. If you're a person that is very closed-minded and not diversity focused, so to speak, then I think that makes it very challenging for people to come in the door and be able to actually interact across the entire organization. Because when you think about my specific organization, I have, I think, close to 40 team members, and only 3 are in Des Moines. So not only do I have cultural differences with India, I have cultural differences between Iowa and New York. You know, so when you think about the different parts of the country, you even have differences in how people think and approach things. And it becomes really challenging when you have such a diverse workforce. So I think that's an attribute that I think educating and getting people that kind of experience around exposing yourself to different aspects of diversity. A lot of times people think it's, when they hear the word diversity, I know we talk about how sometimes people just shut down because they think it's all about race and sexual orientation, and it's not. You know, the way our Wells Fargo Vision and Values talks about it is, diversity is we're all different and we are all the same in some ways. So it's just the fact that we all have different things to bring to the table, and that kind of mindset is really critical to being a strong candidate for employment.
Thanks so much. Kim?
I'm going to take the second part of that question when you said, what are we as businesses doing to help this along? And so I want to address at Wells Fargo, we are constantly updating our technology to make sure that those adaptive things that your clients need are available. For example, if you have visually impaired folks and they need to use the JAWS system, is that compatible with what we have? And we're always on top of that. We're also looking at schedules. Do we have somebody that can only work from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.? We don't normally schedule that way, but why couldn't we? So we are always looking for how can we reasonably accommodate your clients.
Awesome, thank you.
I do currently work with pipelines and organizations to talk about what we are looking for in employees, and how, you know, I work with community-based organizations, and you know, how can you work with your clients to teach them what organizations are looking for. So we do mock interviews, talk about our core values, things like that. But I feel like I am repeating myself over and over to this organization, and then to this organization, and then to this group. So to have one contact to go to, and to be able to do something like this once, and, you know, not just once, but, you know, once every so often, instead of like, this week I'm going here, this week I'm going here, to be able to do that and to reach everybody, or to have one contact to go back to all of those other leaders or job developers and say, this is what Unity Point Health is looking for. We need to assist our clients that way.
Great. And so with that, I think one of the important messages you're sharing is how we can connect to you as a workforce system in a simple and a direct way. And so the potential there might be a sector partnership, for example, where colleagues of yours in the healthcare field are meeting and talking on a regular basis about what their current needs are, what their needs are 2 and 5 years down the road. And all of the partners are sitting around there, whether it's K-12, the community college system, the university system, the workforce folks, the economic development folks, community-based organizations, so that they can then, you can deliver the message in a very succinct and clear way, and then the partners can then come together and organize business solutions to meet your sector as well as your individual company needs. Might be a really good fit for that.
Yep.
Great. So Kim, I'm going to start the next question off with you. And so with that, what issues are you facing in recruiting folks today?
Oh, that's a great question. What I find, and let me phrase this or frame this with, Wells Fargo is a government contractor, and we have very, very specific employment laws that we have to follow. We have required skills that a person must meet, and I have to tell you, I read about 100 to 150 resumes a day. It is sad how many of those are not written well enough for me to tell if you meet my most basic requirements in my most entry-level positions. Some of my positions require 6+ months of customer service. That's my most basic. If I can't tell from a resume, I can't consider them because the risk is too great. So really, it comes from you all helping them write that resume to the correct audience. So for a government contractor, pay attention to that job posting.
Thank you.
Kim's a recruiter, and I have a recruiter too, so she probably has answered what Wells Fargo does. I don't actually, usually I get my resumes from the recruiter, so they do that first line filtering. I would say probably for us, just having specific skill sets that are required for the different jobs. So looking for, in most cases in my organization, you know, if I had an open position today, I'm able to find the skills that I need, but sometimes in technology, especially with an organization of our size, the skill sets required in IT are very specific. So our organization has become very centralized in the services that we provide. So for example, my part of the organization does all of the batch scheduling for the enterprise. So I have a platform in the mainframe where if you have CA7 batch scheduling skills, then that's the specific skill I would need for someone coming into that role. In the open systems platform, we use AutoSys. So it's very specific. It's not, you know, there was a time when we would have a general, if you're Windows certified, we could bring you in, or that kind of skill set. And I think because of a couple of factors, one is that we have changed our model in that we're trying to work in a more efficient manner. So we have an enterprise efficiency initiative where we're looking at how can we do things more efficiently. Well, when you're doing that, what that means for us or for hiring managers is I have to have the skill set on my team in most cases. I can't very often bring someone in at the very entry level in technology because I don't have the resources to train them. So I have to hire at that level. So it's really difficult for people who are looking for entry-level positions. And I guess what I would look at too in that case, a lot of times our help desk organization is probably a good starting place for entry-level technology because a lot of times they do train and they, you know, you come in the door with a basic skill set of computer skills, and then they teach you the Wells Fargo environment. And then through that opportunity, then you have your way to work up. But in other parts of the organization, if I want to go into Oracle database, then I have to have that skill set coming in. So the challenge there is looking at And I think it's very difficult, too, of someone who's got an entry-level skill set to determine, what do I want to do when I grow up? Do I want to be an Oracle database person? You know, I found that out just by getting into the right job over the years. You know, I've been in management for a long time, but I started as an administrative assistant at Principal, actually, many, many years ago, and just found technology as something that I enjoyed and ended up in that path. So I think it gets a little bit more challenging in the technology field in the U.S., especially because so much of the technology pieces are outsourced or put into our international organization. But there are specific skill sets that we look for, which makes it a little bit challenging.
Well, like Kim said, Wells Fargo is a federal contractor, so is Principal. So we have those same requirements from the federal government that require us to follow rules when we're doing our recruiting. So our recruiters will evaluate. First of all, we have everyone apply online, and that's because we need to produce records for the government if we're audited. And so your clients need to have a resume that can be uploaded to the online application. All of our jobs are posted there. That too is a requirement, and so we leave them there, except our executive positions or ones that are just open for a couple days. Everything's posted there as a job requirement. We post them across the country. That's another requirement that we follow. So our recruiters too evaluate hundreds of resumes every week. They have multiple openings they're trying to fill and to meet the competing needs of the businesses. Specifically around recruiting, we're looking for people that fit the Principal culture. So we have a set of values that we hold very near and dear to our heart. We are advocates for integrity and respect and workplace flexibility, things of those nature. And so we want people that are looking for that sort of environment to work in. Also, besides the technical skills that the others focused on, we're looking for people with communication skills that can articulate an answer or work with others to convey a complete thought. When I'm talking about communication, all of a sudden I can't communicate. But anyway, we're looking for people that can interact with others. So much of our work requires collaboration with others, whether it be through technology or with someone in the next cubicle or someone around the world. It requires collaboration. There's not too many jobs where people are working by themselves anymore, so that ability to get my own work done, but also to work with others is huge.
Natalie? Microphone make its way.
Issues in recruiting. Does anyone know any nurses? We could use some of those, so send them my way. But yeah, where are the people? I think a big thing for us is people aren't applying. We have so many jobs in so many different fields. You know, people think of healthcare as nurses, doctors, but so many opportunities. Where are the people? The unemployment rate's so low. We're just shy of going out and tackling people as they're entering the competition hospital. You know, how do I get them here? And it's, we always go to money first. Do we offer sign-on bonuses? Do we look at our salary ranges and raise those? And, maybe that's not necessarily the answer all the time. Well, what is? It's trying to get creative to find those people and to let them know, hey, we are the organization that you want to work for. But it's hard to get people, if they're already established somewhere, to get them to change their mind to, come over to a different organization. So.
Sure. Thank you. Some really good points that you all have made. And I think one of the real challenges, especially for federal contractors, that some of our partners from vocational rehabilitation may or may not know is that you have some hiring expectations in regard to percentages of individuals with disabilities. And so having the opportunity to have access and also knowing that it's not just nurses, right, and that individuals with disabilities can be filling all types of positions within the hospital environment and the healthcare field. And sometimes we get so fixated on those big jobs, you know, are the ones that we most well know with a particular, associate with a particular company or environment. And so it's like a big global world when you take a look at the various businesses and what you have to offer, and whether it's IT is cross-cutting, business services are cross-cutting, they're all types of cross-cutting opportunities that you can take a look at. So thank you for your thoughts on this. Adriana, we're going to pass the mic down to you for our next question, and we're going to focus a little bit on the interviewing challenges that companies are facing these days.
Okay, that's a good question. A lot of the interviewing that I do is virtual. So I, on more than one occasion, have hired people and never seen their face. So that's a really interesting challenge. What I like about it is it removes a judgment when you don't see them. You know, sometimes if you see a person, whether you intend to be biased or not, you might form an opinion based on how they look. So kind of reminds me like of The Voice on TV. You know, do they sing well? And it doesn't matter what you look like. So that, you know, that has its advantage. Probably the disadvantage, which probably has been, I've seen recently actually being on an interview panel. So in leadership positions, specifically within my part of the organization, we interview in a panel setting. So even though it's virtual, there's 4 leaders on, 3 or 4 on the call, because we want to make sure that we all have that diversity thinking that I mentioned. When you have just one person interviewing, you may get a perspective that's not really valid, or you just get one person's perspective. So the panel model is actually very effective for us. I think sometimes it can be intimidating for applicants because they're like, okay, now I'm talking to 3 people or 3 managers, and the pressure probably is a little bit much. So I think that that experience of being comfortable and talking with 3 or more panelists at the same time. The other factor that comes into play is because it's virtual, you don't have the opportunity to see necessarily a full interaction. So your communication skills, I think, as you mentioned, are so important. You know, saying I don't know. I'll give you a couple of examples of some things that have happened to me in interviews. When I first started interviewing applicants in India, I could hear, when I asked a technical question, I could hear a keyboard like they were Googling the answer. And there was quite a long delay in the response. I also had an experience from a cultural situation once where the person, because of their culture, would not answer the question if I asked them. And then I had my male team lead ask a question, and they would answer that question. And after about 3 questions, I picked up on the fact that every time I asked the question, I don't understand what you're saying. And then the team lead would ask because he was male, and he would answer the question for the team lead. You know, and so from a cultural, that's only happened once, but it was very interesting. So from a cultural difference, I think that's a bit of a challenge as well. And when the interviews take place, because they're on the phone, I think matching the vision and values of Wells Fargo is important. You know, being honest, saying if I just need a second to think about that question, say I need a second to think about it. Sometimes people fumble, or they try to make up the answers, or they skirt the answer and you never actually get the direct answer. I was on an interview panel last week where the person talked for I think it felt like 20 minutes. I don't know if it really was, but, we ask a question and they kind of tell you their life story. Being able to answer the question, one thing that I find beneficial is people that ask clarifying questions. Am I understanding you to say da-da-da-da-da? Or did I answer your question adequately? So those kinds of attributes tell me that collaboration virtual makes them, that's showing that they have that skill set. So applicants, even if they don't have the answers, if they're showing that interaction of being able to ask the clarifying questions, being able to validate that the question was answered adequately, shows that they'll be able to communicate virtually. So regardless of what the technical questions are, that's kind of a way that they can exhibit that behavior, which is very helpful.
Great, thank you.
To kind of add to what Adriana was talking about, the process at Principal, first you have to apply online like I referred to earlier, and then we review your resume, and if you're deemed to meet the basic qualifications, then you're going to have an HR interview. And our HR interviews are very focused on our culture. So we're asking questions to try to identify people that are seem like a good fit to our culture. And then if someone is advanced to the department interview, there may be an assessment. So depending on the job that they've applied for, there may be some sort of test that's administered to evaluate their skills in a particular thing. For example, like an Excel assessment if the job requires pivot tables. We want to make sure someone that can't just open Excel, that they can also do some of the advanced functions in Excel. So there might be an assessment, and then some of our interviews too are done via Skype, some of they're in person, some are one-on-one, some are by committee. There's a job shadow involved so that the person can kind of see the type of environment that they're working in. But we do look for the kind of self-awareness that she referred to, where it's a two-way conversation. It's really the candidate's opportunity to find out about the principal, and if this is not a company you want to work for, you want to find that out during the interview, and we want to find out as much as we can about you. So we're going to ask very specific questions, and we really want specific answers. So we use a form of interviewing called behavioral event interviewing, and so we want to know a time in your life that you provided great customer service. And we want it to be specific so that we know, hey, that's the kind of service we want delivered at Principal, and you would be a great fit. If your answers are very vague, or if you kind of go around the question and talk about a time you went shopping but can't talk about a time you delivered great customer service, then we'll probably move on to a candidate who was able to answer that in a better fashion. Now, that doesn't mean people always have to have prior work experience. They've all been consumers. They've had customer service, so they can use examples like that, or if they did volunteer work, or when they were in junior high, they did something. Pull an example out of their lifetime and talk about that to the leader, so the leader knows that they understand what good customer service is. Does that help?
Yes, very helpful, thank you.
I just wanted to add one thing to that. That specific answer is so important. So many people, you ask that question and they're like, well, if I had a customer, here's what I would do. And all of the questions that we ask are, give me an example. And so we want a real example of what you did. And I can't emphasize that enough, because I think that's very important.
Adriana covered it all.
I think another big one is in our phone interviews, the first question we ask, why do you want to work at Unity Point Health? If somebody can't tell me why they want to work for my organization, I am not moving forward with the interview. And with us, it can be, I get a lot of examples of people who had a great experience at one of our hospitals or our clinics, and they just say, I want to work for an organization that treats their patients that way, or even something just walking down the hall and somebody smiled at them and asked if they could help them find directions and, want to work someplace like that. That's great. If it's just an answer of, well, Unity Point Health is growing, and I just want to work for an organization that's growing. Well, how are we growing? What have you researched to know that we are growing? We want specific examples. We want people who want to work at our organization, that know about the organization.
Much. So I think you all hit on another key point, which is when the workforce system is helping you all make a match, one of the important things to think about is the culture of the company and making sure that the individual really values the type of culture that you're cultivating, as well as they really respect those corporate values, because it is such a part of the type of work. And so when we're doing our pre-screening work, we need to really be thinking about those folks who do represent the types of values that you have. So I think that's such a great point to make as we go forward. So talk to me a little bit more, and Nellie, I'm just going to let you keep the mic this time. We don't have to pass it this time. But talk to me a little bit more about some of the hiring challenges specifically that you're facing.
I think some of our challenges, as were kind of stated before, as far as our pre-employment process, we're a healthcare organization, so our regulations are steep as well. As far as somebody has, obviously we do references. The criminal background check is a big one that prevents us from hiring quite a few people. With being healthcare, all of our new hires, whether they had a charge that was in 1975 to last year, has to go through the DHS process. And DHS, Department of Human Services, has the final say whether somebody can work in our hospitals or not. Health and drug screen, that drug screen can get people too. We have some issues with some people passing that as well. So I think those are kind of our challenges is, once we do find those right candidates and are trying to get them in the door, then it's having them pass that pre-employment process.
Great, thank you. Kim? Oh.
All hospitals.
The question was, is that a regulation just of Unity Point Health? My understanding, it's all hospitals in Iowa have to go through the DHS process for criminal backgrounds.
Great question.
Okay, so at Wells Fargo, we have a contingency offer. You're going to get this job if and when you pass the criminal background check and the fingerprinting. So we have like that you can have it, but no. Yeah, and in Wells Fargo, no, we do not at Wells Fargo. In fact, this is something new for us. We used to have, even on our applications, hey, will you do a criminal back? We have since removed that. Our legal department has indicated that that's not a safe question for us to ask, but we do tell them we're going to run a criminal background check if we do the contingency offer, and then if they're deemed not eligible, they get a letter that says you're not eligible, and then I follow up with that. I don't see what they do. It says eligible or ineligible, so I have to call and say you're not eligible. But I tell you what, 99.9% of the people will tell me every time what it is that stopped them. I'm like, no, really, I don't need to know, but they'll tell me. So it's very, very intensive. And for financial services, that comes from that FDIC law that was enacted in 2011. So that's new for Wells Fargo.
I was going to address your question. Principal being global, we do run background checks, but in other countries, of course, we run what's equivalent to what we do domestically. Domestically, since we're in so many states and cities and counties were starting to pass laws about, since the economic recession in 2008, legislators were trying to get people back to work, of course, and so they started passing individual laws that prohibited employers on asking questions about criminal history. So a lot of employers who've tracked that, it's not a law in Iowa, but if you're outside of Iowa, most employers that track that have removed it from their application and moved it to post-offer so that we're not violating any local or state laws. We too have a contingent offer, so at the time we extend an offer, we say it's contingent upon the outcome of the background check. Nobody will start until it's cleared. We run criminal on everybody, but other types of checks are dependent upon the role. So if someone's handling money, they might have a different check than our physicians that we employ have a different type of check. So it's related to the job. One other thing I was going to mention is because there is identity theft in this time where we all live, the FCRA requires that we notify people if something's come back on their background check, and that's the letter that Kim was referring to. We send them a letter and then we give them 10 days to respond to that, to say, hey, that wasn't me, someone stole my identity. And then we have a whole process around that. So there are some things built in there to try to evaluate what was the charge, were they convicted, and we're only looking at convictions. We're not looking at charges.
So you had asked about charges from 20 years ago. Same thing. We look at recency and relevancy, and DHS does too. So somebody had an OWI in 1975. They still have to fill out the paperwork, but more than likely they're going to clear. Now, if somebody had 3 OWI charges in the past 10 years, we probably wouldn't let them be a courier and drive our vans, or if they had theft charges, we probably wouldn't hire them in the cashier's office. Those types of things are evaluated. No matter what the charge or conviction is, they do have to fill out that paperwork, and DHS has the final say. But 90% of the time, people clear that process. With Unity Point Health, what positions are considered under Unity Point Health Des Moines? So anybody working in the hospitals, whether it's a housekeeper or patient registrar, has to go through that process because there is a chance that they will be in contact with patients.
Great question. Anybody else have questions in the audience that they'd like to put forward? Yes. Open to OJTs?
Okay. As far as internships or on-the-job trainings, yes, we actually have worked with DMAC and Goodwill Services here to develop certificate programs for some of our hard-to-recruit positions. So we have, obviously, there's a CNA certificate. There's a hospitality one that focuses on EVS, food service positions. There's a sterile processing one, those people who work in the surgical sterile processing area. We're working on a cook one right now because we're having trouble finding cook positions because of all of the restaurants, the wonderful restaurants that are opening up in Des Moines. So we worked a lot with those. And then through that certificate program, they do get an internship or an on-the-job shadow through those certificate programs.
Great. Others?
On the opposite end of that, at Wells Fargo, because of our security levels, if you're working there, you have to be an employee or a contractor. So I wouldn't be able just to bring somebody in for the day to job shadow because the risk of them getting hold of customer information is so great. And if that happens, then our customers get mad and they sue us and it just snowballs. So that would be a big no for us.
I think similar to Kim, we're a financial institution, so we have some of the same constraints. However, we do have internships. We have over 200 in the Des Moines area every year. They are primarily for college-level students, where they've started some of their core curriculum in the types of jobs that we hire for. But we do have a lot of our services, like Natalie was talking about, those services are outsourced through Sodexo and ABM management. So I'm not aware of programs that they have that would be on the principal grounds.
Any other? Yes.
I think there are some. I won't say that we do a great job at it today. I know there's been cases when, for example, several years ago, we were having a problem filling certain IT jobs, and we worked with DMAC and some other two-year universities to develop a program and for people to work at principal. A number of our jobs entry-level jobs do have on-the-job training, so we do not expect people to know our products and know our systems before they come in the door. We certainly have training programs that teach them that. They do need to have some basic requirements like computer skills. We don't teach people how to use a keyboard and some of those basic skills, I guess.
All right. I think I saw another hand up in the back. Was there another question? Yes. Uh-huh. Great question. What's the number one reason people lose their jobs?
Well, I can speak to the IT world. Right now, the number one reason is because we're shifting resources to international, primarily for cost savings. I mean, that's the significant reason. I think that shift, the technology organization as a whole went through kind of a big one, a big shift about 5 years ago, where we said, okay, we need to put X percentage of our staff over there. Now it's not as frequently. Right now, I would say that the lost positions that are occurring, at least within my organization, are really around efficiency. So what happens is, as a technology organization, we're expected to improve our efficiency X percentage each year. So once we, for example, one of the things I'm doing in my team right now is we have a process that requires the manual team member to do a manual task. We're in the process of implementing a technology automated solution for that. So once that happens, then I'm going to probably have to reduce staff. So most cases in the technology world now are around, we're finding more efficient ways of doing things from usually utilizing technology, and therefore that's reducing the number of team members that we actually need.
I'm going to speak to the other side of that then. In my call center positions, the number one reason why people leave, and I will say involuntarily, we've asked them to leave, they have the inability to follow our policies and procedures. We clearly say, when you're at work, put your cell phone away. Yet on a daily basis, we have to walk people out because they just can't follow that rule. And you know, we referenced this earlier to those millennials attached to the hip. They are with their cell phones and they just can't leave it alone. And we say, don't be on Facebook on your Wells Fargo computer, because we know. And yet on a daily basis, we walk people out because they're updating their status on Facebook.
At principal, I would say similar to what these ladies have said, that if we have a large reduction in force, we're either selling part of the business because it's not meeting its financial goals. And unfortunately, what we try to do is place those people in other parts of the organization. So what employees need to do on a daily basis is keep their skills up to date and stay visible, build a good network so that they land on their feet if something like that happens. On an individual basis, I would say most of our churn as an organization is in claims, customer service, some of those entry-level jobs where maybe that person just took the job because they needed any job and it wasn't something they really wanted to do, and thus they didn't perform well, or they didn't really understand that they were going to be on the phone all day talking to customers, and they decided they didn't like that. We try to talk about the conditions of the job because it's very costly for us to lose employees, and we want people to stay. And we want them to be successful and move on to the next job in the career path, but not everybody has the patience or tolerance to do that. They maybe want to be promoted to president within the first year. And that's not usually the timeline for that.
That means you talk to my nephew.
And I'll add to that. And I think the millennials have that mentality a lot stronger than previous generations. Like, I've been here a year, I should be promoted. That's not how the real world works. I think a lot of times too, and this has been a challenge for me, is that team members have been in a position for X number of years. Let's say they've been in a position for 3 years, and they think tenure is what gets you a promotion, and it's not. What gets you the promotion is you've got added responsibilities, or you've got a new opportunity. You know, there's things like that. Tenure no longer is the only thing that gets you promoted, and that's a really big challenge for people to grasp. I have in one of my teams, for example, I have all analyst 3 positions, and that's the function of that team. They're never going to be analyst 4s unless they move to a different team, and that's just the reality. They know that coming in. We're open about that coming in, yet I still have monthly conversations of what do I need to do to get promoted? Well, we've talked about that. What is your development plan? What do you want to do? And I'll help you find something else in the company or even something else in my organization, but staying status quo, serving my time doesn't get me promoted. And that's a really big thing that for some reason millennials seem to be more challenged with getting that than some of our previous generations.
I think, and I'll say this a little better than I said to Kim under my breath, a reason that people do not stay employed is their inability to make intelligent decisions. We have employee relations business partners in human resources, and the stories I hear from them of why they had to write people up, why they fired people, just astounds me. Like I said before, I work with programs and pipelines to work with people to get them in the door, mock interviews, how you act at an interview, your soft skills. I think there needs to be more focus on what do you do when you get in the door? What happens when you get the job? You're still on an interview. Every day you show up for work is, I'm counting, every day you show up for work is a continuation of the interview. And I think some people get in the door and it's like, well, I got a job, I can do whatever I want now. And it just astounds me what people do. And there are names that I remember when I hear the employee relations business partners talking, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I worked with that person to get them in the door and they just blew it. 2 months later, they couldn't show up for work or, they did something not intelligent, so.
And in technology, the people who've been fired, first of all, you get, unless you actually break a law or do something fraudulent, which they have done. But if you don't do something that extreme, you get lots of chances, more than hiring managers would like to give you sometimes. And so the main reason, I'll give you just an example. I had a team member that got fired, extremely technical, absolute strong performer, loved everything about his work except for he could not get to work on time, no matter what he did. And we would have a conversation about, do we need to change your hours? Do you need a new alarm clock? Do you need a friend to call you? What can we do to get you to work on time? And literally, I think it was 3 write-ups. I mean, I kept going, dragging it out as long as I could because I really did not want to lose this team member. And then when I said, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to let you go, why? And I was just like, I just don't understand. And I think back to Kim's point is they just don't follow the rules. And I think they're not usually very hard rules. And the people in technology that get fired are usually people that have done something unethical. I mean, 9 times out of 10, they've just tried to trick the system, or and technology folks are typically better at it because they know how to manipulate technology, but the reality is that's what gets you in trouble.
Yes, another question. Advice for 20-year-old candidates and 40-year-old candidates.
Uh, 20-year-olds, we like to see internships, leadership, skills that they've developed in addition to their academics. I'd rather have someone that's a B student but was involved in school activities and showed some leadership. Maybe they worked too. Again, we only know what's on that resume, so if that's not showing that, we don't know it. So their first job is to kind of get that first interview and write a good resume. For someone that's 40, I wouldn't say it's that much different. If they're changing careers, it's nice to know if you're a teacher and you want to work in the financial industry, why are you making a change? That's one of the obvious questions, I think. And then, how is that teaching experience applicable to our job? Certainly you have a lot of life experience, so write your resume. We all know what teachers do, so don't spend your time saying that you wrote curriculum and give us a rundown of what your teaching job was, because we all kind of know we get that. So tell us how those skills transfer to our jobs. Look at our job postings and explain how those transfer. My daughter was a lifeguard, and she was looking for her first professional role at Unity Point. And so we tried to draw parallels in her resume about how she had to follow processes and procedures at the pool when she was filling the chemicals in the pool, or so nobody got chemical burns. And she had to enforce rules and make the, blow her whistle and make kids not run and do the swim test. And she had to work with the director of the pool, and she had to work with 2-year-olds. So she tried to illustrate her versatility both through the interview answers and on her resume so that she would get that interview and get hired. So I think in general the advice is the same. I would only point out that if they have any internship work, how can they, to try to apply for internships, I guess, to get that real world experience. And then for maybe non-traditional students, how can they take work that they have done and apply it to the job or characteristics that we're looking for? Because we want that life experience too. They've kind of worked out the kinks. Hopefully we know they're going to get to work on time by then. And they've figured all that part out, how to use the alarm clock. So.
And I think adapting the resume to the job is a really critical, regardless of what position you're applying for. Read the job requirements and make that connection to what is it that I have done that is going to make me successful in this role. I think that's really critical. Don't just have a blanket resume that you send to everybody regardless of what job you're fulfilling. And I think to the 20-year-old, they're showing that not just that I'm going to school, but what am I doing else for myself to show that I have initiative, that I'm motivated to continue to self-develop, whether that be I'm doing work in the community, I'm taking leadership development classes, just showing that, because I always think about it from the perspective of, if I have 20 resumes from 20 20-year-olds, what's going to make me stand out from somebody else, from the person next to me? Is it that I'm just a college student and they're just a college student, or is it I've done other things? And sometimes I think what I have had happen, especially when bringing people in, is that they will have that, they've done it, but it wasn't on their resume, and for whatever reason they got in anyway. And then we find out that they've got all of this other stuff that they've done. And so it's not that you want a 10-page resume, but call out what makes me different. I always think about, when I look at the resume, what makes this person different than the next one? Because that might even make the difference between whether you get through to the next interview or not.
All right. Well, we appreciate your wisdom, and we'll have one last round robin, and that is one tip or suggestion you'd have for the workforce professionals in this room that we really haven't touched on yet. If, as a business partner working with them, what's one last thought you'd like to leave with them that you haven't had an opportunity to express?
I have the microphone.
Go, Kim.
Here's one last thought. Practice, practice, practice. You cannot do too much practice with your mock interviews. You can't do too many resume drafts. Do it till you get it right.
Okay. I think along with practice, that anticipate what employers might want, and practice when the stakes aren't high. Practice on a job when you don't care. Then you're ready when the one that comes along that you really care about.
All right. Well, join me in thanking our panelists yet again. Appreciate you, Natalie, Kim, Adriana, and Lisa. Want to just share where we're going to be going from here. So we're going to have the opportunity to take a break, and then this group will hopefully come back, because what we're going to do is do an employer debrief. We're going to have a discussion about what are the key themes that you heard, and really delve into that, because tomorrow morning we'll come back and then have a solutions-based discussion. What are some of the things that we can do as the workforce system to help these wonderful companies that are based here in Iowa to stay here, to grow here, and to employ those who live here in the wonderful positions that they have to offer. And then as we continue through the discussion, we'll talk about the value of sector partnerships. So don't want you to miss anything. We'll take a 15-minute break, and once again, we want to thank our panelists.
I just thought of one thing.
Yes.
If they are a veteran, please make sure that is put on their resume. Wells Fargo actually has a Veterans Initiative.
Excellent point.
And so we are trying to increase our veteran employees, so, and disabled, yes. So make sure that that is on their resumes, because that is an area of focus for us.
If you're interested in positions at Wells Fargo for your clients, throw me your business card.
Excellent. Thank you once again to our panelists and to the great questions from the audience. See you in 15.